Hello, guys. Welcome to Indiana Sports Connection. We are going to talk about the Oregon Indiana game, what this means for Indiana, what it means for both teams. And I made the thumbnail. Like, is this a game that could really, raise the ships for both teams? I do believe it could and it should because of last year's game. Like, remember when Ohio State lost to Oregon last year? Out of that game came so many people just saying, like, Ohio State lost nothing. They lost no ground. Can Indiana play them down to the wire like that? And if I remember that game, it was like Will Howard made some mistakes late in that game that they were like time management mistakes. So if Indiana plays them, and by all accounts, this is even a better Oregon team this year. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about their line, talk about their defensive line and everything like that. And I got a couple of clips of Dan Lanning. Both of these coaches, they are leaving no bulletin board material out there for this game. We had the clip of Curt Cignetti we played yesterday. They asked him, how about, because he made, if you knew previously, Cignetti had made a comment about teams that had $40 million to spend on their teams, talking about Ohio State and Oregon. And when Cignetti was asked about this week, he said, I have no idea about the amount of resources they have. So he's not putting anything out there. These guys are just showing each other the biggest amount of respect because they don't want to put anything out there for the teams to be like, look, we need to crush these guys because they think we only are winners because they have $40 million. I'm going to say, you do the money is critical. Building a culture is more critical. I think, like, with Cignetti, he is able to build the culture at Indiana. And that brings me to my next point, really. These two coaches like, and I know Lanning is a lot younger than Cignetti, and Cignetti got a lot later jump getting into the head coaching. But are these the two biggest, like, up and coming coaches in college football right now? I mean, it seems like the schools from the SEC, Florida and Ole Miss, some of the ones that are really struggling. Not that Ole Miss has struggled that bad, but the ones that don't get in the playoff, they're gunning for Dan Lanning or Curt Cignetti. So this is a very intriguing matchup. Like, we talk about the coaching matchup. There are a lot of huge matchups in this game. The quarterback matchup, Moore against Mendoza, is super critical. And then their best wide receiver, his name's Moore too, Darkanian Moore. So it's more to more. We're going to be hearing a lot of more and more and more in this game, and probably some more after that. But that's the other big matchup: Surratt against Moore, Moore against Mendoza, and Lanning against Cignetti. There's something very interesting that we did learn this week, and maybe we didn't know this about this Curt Cignetti teams, is that they do not audible. Like, in these games, even the games at home, they're not a team that's going to go out there and audible a whole bunch. So we learned that about Curt Cignetti and his teams. Now, like, there is one thing, and I got a clip of Dan Lanning here, because Curt Cignetti's teams, what they do execute everything to a very, very high level. And then what they do off of that is, once you think you know what they're doing, then Indiana will throw like a different type of wrinkle in. Let's get this first clip of Dan Lanning, what he had to say about.
Phenomenal coach and has done a really good job.
All right, Chris.
Just your impressions and thoughts of their offense. I know it's real balanced, and what do you do to try to combat that balance?
Yeah, I think the first thing that sticks out is, like, this is a team that has a clear identity. They know what they're good at, and they do it really, really, really well. They run the ball well, and they obviously have RPO tags off a lot of their runs that they make sure what they're running it into an advantageous look. When they're throwing it into a good look. They do a really good job of that. So that's the thing that stands out. They're rushing as well as anybody in the country, and then throwing as well as anybody in the country, and they have a lot of weapons that they can use.
On the left here, John.
All right, there we go. This does make me question. I know they run a lot of these RPO plays, but early in the year, there was one where Cignetti really got in Mendoza's face and was like, hand the ball off. Like, what are you doing? is he truly reading the defense, or are sometimes they just really calling like, hand this one off? I don't know. But Indiana does seem to have a very polished game plan when they come out, and Signetti is the type of coach that he wants to control all of these types of things. That can be good and bad. I mean, sometimes you might have a quarterback, you might have a player that you trust enough to go out there and, sometimes give like hand signals to the wide receivers. And I mean, we watched Peyton Manning for years. So it's like he did everything on his own. I know nobody really wants to do that, but it could be for Signetti to grow as a coach. Maybe at some point he will have a player like that, and that might be where he needs to trust in. If you get a quarterback that's that talented, you trust that they see what they're seeing out there and are able to change those plays. Now, it's hard to do when it's super loud, and I've heard a lot of Oregon fans too talking, because anytime these games come up, because a lot of IU fans are saying like, well, we played at Iowa, and this is not going to be like Iowa. It's not going to be as hard as Ohio State. It's not going to be like playing at the Shoe or at Michigan, but it's going to be a lot harder than playing at Iowa. And let's look at like some of their players. So the real one I wanted to pull up was their defensive line, and I don't know if you can see this all the way, but their defensive line, if you just look at this, write down the list of practically all the guys they have playing on their line. And I mean, I looked up their starters. They got a lot of Hawaiian players on this team, and I am terrible being a Hoosier at pronouncing all of these Hawaiian names. So if you go right down the line of all the guys on their list, it's like most of them, all of them are 280 to 330. They got a lot of guys in the 300 range. Um, and this is Indiana's defensive line. But yeah, I did want to point out the big difference between the defensive lines. If and I do have Oregon's on here, but that is what I was looking at, because Signetti brought that up in the press conference, and it's gonna be that's going to be the tail of the tape. Can our offensive line block up their defensive line? Now, this is a much more talented and a much better offensive line than Indiana had last year. So, has that talent level raised to the point? And there is also one other wrinkle, like we have to think about last year, is you couldn't move the pocket very much with Curtis Rourke. We found out that's the other thing that I think is all lingering in all of our minds is Curtis Rourke had the ACL injury. So against Ohio State, when they directly blitzed him and Sawyer and those guys were coming like right off the edge after him, like they couldn't do anything. Like they weren't going to bootleg him out and have him, try to make some athletic play. Now Mendoza, when he came in, a lot of us and myself and everybody, he's more athletic than Curtis Rourke. He is more athletic than Curtis Rourke. I think his best way to get away is to fight through the middle. I mean, if he is able to drop back and step up in the pocket and see that guys have their heads turned and they're in man coverage, or they're back in a zone and there's just a big void there, Mendoza can run it like right up in the middle. But he's not gonna like out athletic people like out to the corner. And against Iowa, he took that big shot on the sideline. That was a big run. He's made big plays with his feet, but most of them are like right in the middle of the field where he's able to read the defense and get away. I just think his ability in these bigger games, where last year we had Curtis Rourke, I do think he does have more of an ability to stay on his feet, get away. He seems bigger than Curtis Rourke to me, although I think they're almost the same size, but that is something to watch in playing like this type of a game. Indiana cannot play scared in this game at all. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Like the first time when we played at the Shoe last year, the even though we hung in the game in the first half, we did not look like we looked like we were playing that game to not get blown out like 56-0. Like we were trying, we almost ran the ball on them, and we were trying to do some of the things. That's why I just think in this game, we are going to have to take some of our shots. I think Oregon is going to get on the perimeter with the wide receivers. They have 6 wide receivers with over 100 yards. And their tight end is an unbelievable player. He's their third leading receiver on this team. But Oregon's going to make big plays. So let's get this off of here. So yeah, that's something I'm going to be watching. Like the line, like Indiana's line has to hold up just enough for Mendoza to be able to get the ball out to Cooper, or even like against Iowa, some of our plays almost got blown up, like the end around to Umar Cooper. Can we run some of those trick style plays in this game, but like add like a little wrinkle in, add something in to make it different? Here's what Dan Lanning had to say about Kurt Cignetti in this team. This is the second clip of Dan Lanning here.
2023, just how has he progressed from Cal in 2023? Just how has he progressed from then until now in this season?
Well, I think he's surrounded by some really talented players, and I think again has a really clear understanding of scheme. This offense, when you watch it, it has an identity. You're going to.
So I want to preface this. He's talking about Mendoza. Mendoza played at Oregon in 2023 for when he was playing for Cal. So he was asking him about she was asking him about the offense and how it's different, how Mendoza's progressed.
Going to see the same play ran a couple times. The window dressing might be different, but they know how to run this play. It's not about inventing new offense. It's about running it better than you and executing it better than you, and they do a really good job of that. And then they do enough of that to where you think, okay, this is what it's going to be, and then they throw a wrinkle in there, and it is different. So he's playing in an offense that clearly has an identity, and he's playing around really good players.
You're on the right, Zach.
There you go. And, that's what Cignetti does. Like, they're going to execute the plays beyond, like, the first, like, set of, like, scripted plays. Indiana is going to have to get a push with their offensive line. And our defensive line is going to have to outflank them in, like, different ways. Like, we're going to have to bring the intensity. And the guys, we have Tucker is one of our bigger guys on the defensive line. And one guy, his name, I struggle with it so badly. Mario Landino. I always think his name is Langford. But Landino, he is a lankier defensive lineman. We saw him against Illinois, like bust right through the center. That could be like, is he a guy who plays inside that can really bring the quickness like straight up the center? I'll be watching that in this game. Like, are our defensive tackles able to outquick them? A guy who had a great talent like that we played against last year was Howard Cross, who he wasn't like the tallest guy or the biggest guy. I think he was like 290, but he was going to go in the NFL draft. But you look at just his like intangible, like the numbers of like his body size and everything, and you think, oh, this guy's not something that great. But you can do it other ways with Twitch. So our defensive line is going to have to get through. I think right now, Jones, our linebacker, has some sacks. Will we bring a corner blitz at some point? Because I think we really got to go after them and force them to be able to get rid of the ball. You cannot let them sit back there. And I think they're going to do the same thing to us. I think Oregon is going to come after Mendoza and try to make him move off the spot. And I think that's really going to be the tail of the game. Is Indiana able to come up with enough creative plays offensively to kind of like mitigate that pressure and get some first downs and get kind of like grind the game away? I think time of possession will be huge in this game because whatever team is able to kind of win that possession battle, I think is going to be huge. If Indiana can run the ball and get first downs, that is the key to Indiana's offense is getting the reason why sometimes they look so smooth, like against teams like Illinois, is because they're not getting to any third and longs. They're just like first and second down. They're getting right down into the getting down to like a 3rd and 2 play or not even having like many third down plays. So in a game like this, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to execute like a 3rd and 10 or a 3rd and 12. You're going to have that in your playbook and go after it. And yeah, I just don't want to see them play scared. I do want to see them like really take it to Oregon, play with them. And if these two teams play to, and here's one other thing. I mean, just on my mind is like the win they won at Penn State. That win does not look nearly as good, them winning in overtime there. So it's a good thing both of these teams are matching up. This is the biggest game of the week. It's the biggest game, really, of the college football season so far, except for the fact that when Indiana's a top 5 team or top 10 team, they just love to like throw smoke at Indiana. And they will, if Indiana loses this game, even if it's close, I bet they move Indiana, way down in the rankings. Who cares about that? As it goes on, I think Indiana's got a good chance to beat Penn State. That's going to be a tough game. But yeah, I mean, we can't pay attention to all of that. Like Indiana's got to go out there against Oregon and play like lights out in this game. And on the three and shorts, hopefully they're saving the creative plays for this game. Hopefully, I've heard Signetti say that, and I don't know if he was doing that against Iowa, but they ran some really garbage plays on the goal on the 4th down plays because we were 0 for 3. So let's hope, hey, he's due to, move some bodies or at least like maybe they should try some passes on those plays. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist. Normally they do one of two things in a football game. They either run it or they pass it, and they ran it 3 times and they didn't get there. So yeah, I could definitely, let's hope they got something up their sleeve. I've been watching so much of the Colts. I would love to see some naked bootlegs. I would love to see some real misdirection plays where you get all of their line moving one direction, roll Mendoza the other direction, or get them all going this way, roll them. I would like to see some of those type of plays and, maybe get the ball to Surratt across the middle or just have like a drag route on one of those. I think those are good too. And, last year in some of those big games, and I'm going back to this, is like Curtis Rourke. How much was he able to do that? I think we're against some of these top level teams. Oregon is good everywhere. Their DBs, that might be the one area of their team that maybe we could expose, but we're going to have time to throw to be able to do it. And their defensive tackles and their linebackers are really, really good. Tuioti, this linebacker for them, he leads them and tackles and sacks, I believe. So you're gonna have to watch out for them. And they got that Hawaiian connection. They have a lot of those of the Polynesian players, which those guys are some of the most phenomenal football players out there. So the last time Indiana played them, and I watched this game last night, I watched a bunch of it, was in 2004. And I'm going to tell you, how old are all of us? Because I watched that game, and 2004, for some reason, feels like it was like in like the 70s or something. But yeah, I watched that game with oh God, I can't. Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. I mean, that really takes you back. And Jerry DiNardo. Oh man, what the kind of damage he did at Indiana to the football team. Him and Mike Woodson might be in a like who's the worst coach of all time kind of a contest between Jerry DiNardo and Mike Woodson. Like what are they doing here? But Yeah, it's we eat some clock and prevent. Yes, we do. That is key. Like being able to just eat some clock and be able to let your defense rest because our defense is gonna we're gonna play off of intensity. We're gonna play off of like out athleticizing these people, if that's even a word. So when you're doing that, you got to give your guys some time because yes, they have us in the size category. They have us on the defensive line, and yeah, it's going to be one hell of a game. I think Indiana is going to play one hell of a game in this game, and I really can't wait for it. And it's not a must-win game for Indiana. It's it's a game that would be very nice if they won, and if they did win it, I do want to say this: if Indiana wins this game, they should be ranked number one in the country. Like, let there be no doubt about it. They would have beat two top 10 teams. They won't put them at number one in the country. But look, if any other team was ranked, I think where Indiana's at right now, like Ohio, I'm saying like Ohio State or Michigan, there's no doubt if they won this game, they'd probably put them at number one. But they probably will not do that. But by all accounts, if Indiana does win this game, they will slide maybe into the top three, which would be unbelievable for Kurt Signetti. We can only dream, I'm throwing all this out there. I did have one. Wait, let me find this. Let me find this guy because I wanted to. I watched this guy's show, and you find very few people saying that Indiana is a national championship contender this year. But let me bring this up.
That Indiana this year is, I think, that Indiana this year is a real national title contender. And they're going to do a much better job of scaling against the superior talented teams. Much, much better than last year. And for that reason, I do think that when you look at, say, Indiana's pass rush versus Oregon's pass pro, one team will win sometimes, they'll win other times. Some drives will be Indiana's, others will be Oregon's. Same will go with pass defense, coverage, pass rush, tackling in space, pursuit. Same thing with run defense, tackling, penetration, rush offense, penetration, running backs busting tackles, pass offense, wide receivers getting open, sometimes they get locked up. Sometimes the quarterbacks look like.
Yeah, I saw that dude. I just started watching his show and he started popping up on my YouTube. I mean, he does some pretty decent coverage. It's like Big Ten was something. I would plug it, but yeah. I mean, I was surprised. I was watching some of these previews of like what Indiana's going to do. A lot of people are giving Indiana a lot of respect. I mean, Indiana Ari on 3. I was reading some articles today, and I think a lot of people have at least come around to the idea that this Indiana team is better than last year's Indiana team. And I mean, by all accounts, they are. They got a lot harder of a schedule this year, but they are a much more put together team with Mendoza, with the guys they have had coming back, and with the way they've upgraded the offensive line. So I think I would definitely take the points in this. I think Indiana is a 7.5 or 8.5 point underdog in this game. If I was going to bet on it, I would definitely take the points. I don't think Indiana is going to lose by more than a touchdown. But I mean, I got to pick Indiana to win this game. It's a tough game on the road, but I'm going to be rooting like hell for them. And I can't pick against the Hoosiers. I can't say, but my heart will be rooting for them. But in my mind, I know what a tough test this is going to be against Oregon. So, hey, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Indiana Sports Connection. Until next time, stay classy out there, Hoosier fans.